Welcome to yet another exciting and insightful episode of In Conversation. My name is Bongani and I'm going to be your host for the show. Today I'm honored and blessed to be joined in studio by the chairperson of council, Ms. Xoliswa Kakana. Ms. Xoliswa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers.
We are the ones who are honored, actually. We'd like to congratulate you firstly on your appointment as the chairperson of Council of the University of Johannesburg.
Thank you.
How
Thank
does
you.
that feel?
It was humbling, and at the same time, it felt like a vote of confidence by my colleagues. I had been a member of council for 4 years, and so it came as a surprise that they saw that I could take on this leadership role.
Wow.
And yeah, it makes me, actually, it imposes a responsibility on me to say, therefore, because they put their faith in you, I need to do my best to make sure that I execute on the aspirations of council.
Given the experience there, of course, I can also start to understand why they chose you. But can we go a little bit back to understand your qualifications that you have probably and a little bit of a background that makes you so suitable for this job?
Yeah, I laugh because sometimes I remove some of the qualifications from my CV. I'm a person who really believes in in education as a whole and in higher education. So I've gone through a lot of training and learning from various institutions, both in South Africa and internationally. I don't know if you want me to talk about the entire education path or...
Nah, I think you're quite detailed on that. But thank you for hinting us on that. So to contextualize your term in office currently, there's a lot of changes that are occurring within the institution. What's your take on that, the context?
Change brings opportunity, lots and lots of opportunity. And we must understand that, yes, there might be levels of uneasiness because, yes, now this is saying there's newness. What does it mean? Are the people who are coming on board qualified to be able to take us? Do they even have a staying power to take us to the next level that we are aspiring for? But at the same time, for me, newness brings new creativity, fresh ideas, fresh thought, fresh even leadership styles. So I see a lot of opportunity from this rather than unease or dis-ease, particularly because there's certain levels of continuity. It's not like you are wiping out completely the entire leadership of the institution, but you have certain levels of continuity. I've been on council, I've been a member of council for 4 years, and therefore my leadership now is, I'm just elected to a level, to a role that says you then lead council in its deliberation and decision making. That's it. A new vice chancellor, our vice chancellor comes from the institution himself. I mean, he's brewed, he's born and brewed in this institution. He's got orange blood in himself. So therefore, there's a level of, okay, this is a person who has the same values, who has the same aspiration for this institution, and therefore even there, but he comes with a different kind of leadership. He comes with his own shoes, as was said at the
Inauguration.
Yes.
Well, touching base on the Vice Chancellor and yourself as the chairperson of council and also the Chancellor, I feel like most people, we have not clearly defined that in terms of the roles, what the people play. So we tend to mistake it. Can you kindly maybe in few sentences distinguish for me the three roles that are there?
We are fortunate to have the chancellor that we have because that is more a titular position. It is a role that says, because we recognize who you are in the world, whom you have been in the world, therefore we would like to entrust upon you the ceremonial opening and closing of our ceremonies. So she comes in as a person, former deputy president, my goodness, what do you want? Head of UN Women, what more do you want? And a leader who participated a lot and contributed a lot in the struggle of this country. I've known her from that time as well. So we have somebody in that role who's very well positioned just by who they are to allow the university to share in their status as a human being. And so that's where the role ends. However, we as council and the Vice Chancellor have an opportunity to appeal to her to assist us in areas that we think her influence, her ability to open doors, her ability through her international stature to open certain doors for us or even guide us may appeal to her. And depending on her availability to do that, we will get that assistance. Council, on the other side, has got a strong governance role in the institution. So whereas we are there, our mandate is that of ensuring the institution is doing what it is set up to do. Firstly, prioritizing students, prioritizing research and learning in the institution. But number two, making sure that the resources of the institution are, number one, available, but number two, they are utilized in very transparent but efficient ways as well. But then number three, we then can give guidance and direction to any other direction that the institution, so we need to deliberate on the direction that the institution wishes to take. And then number four, we are the decision-making structure. So there's certain, I would call it levels of authority of spending that's given to the Vice Chancellor and their management team. However, we as council then, if they have to make decisions that go above those levels that have been set, then they have to approach council, and our job becomes that of deliberating and making decisions that are only geared towards the support of the institution itself, UJ.
Wow.
I hope that's
crystal clear. That's as clear as the sky. I now have more understanding on that. And having you to lead the council itself, for me, it begs the question to try and maybe understand your vision. How do you plan on maintaining efficient operations for UJ to maintain its success and stability?
I've said that before, that it's such an honor actually to just be part of this institution, because yes, this is an institution that has been well run since its inception in 2005. It's an institution that's a pride to South Africa. Therefore, it's quite a responsibility to say, number one, how do you maintain and even build up on the trajectory that the university has taken so far? Now, as leader of council, it just begins with making sure that, because a lot of council members will be transitioning over the years throughout their term, making sure that we are alert to the kinds of men and women that we bring into the institutions to join council. We make sure that we bring in people who share the values of the university. I'm not here for any reason but because my colleagues saw that I do embody the values of the institution. So making sure that whoever enters the university, down up to the levels where we make appointments, making sure that the people that we bring into the institution are people who have those ambitions. Number two, I mean, the previous 4 years, and this is self-criticism, I do not think I've been as engaged as I possibly could have been. So there's an opportunity to also improve on that. How do we as council make sure that we make decisions on behalf of the university? You can't make decisions on an institution that you don't know well. So how do we get ourselves to a place of better engagement so that it is easier to make decisions on behalf of the institution itself? But also, I mean, as chair of council, therefore, the Vice Chancellor reports to me, and I manage the performance of the Vice Chancellor. How do I make sure that in that relationship with the Vice Chancellor, we are continuously in conversation so that it's not about quarterly just meeting up to say, how am I doing, etc. So there's a lot of opportunity to make sure that we continue and we even improve on the trajectory of the university.
Wow. Wow. Those really big shoes that you're having there. I'm sure you brought yours as well, just like the Vice Chancellor.
Mine are just sandals, nothing else.
But no, I'm quite impressed. I would also want to find out, well, I believe also your role is to ensure that the university is well connected and represented with its stakeholders and external bodies.
Yes.
So there is that concern around decision making, so the interference probably, having the stakeholders and external bodies, how do you maintain neutrality, being at the center of it all?
Yeah. For me, and I found it here in the university, it was critically important to enter council and find that we have to sign that my organizations nor any other related organizations for members of family will not do business with the University of Johannesburg. I think that's a very critically important decision that was made by council, because I found it here. It doesn't come from me, because it clears all opportunities for any gray areas to evolve. But number two, like I said, looking at the variety of people who are in the university, in council, they come with very strong relationships in whatever sectors we choose them, sometimes because of the relationships that they have. But because they have personally committed to saying we will not create gray areas, our role is not to engage on behalf of the university. It's that of bringing those resources available to us, to the men and women who are in executive, who are tasked with that. I think that helps create that wall for council members to not find themselves dabbling in any of that. Of course, human beings are human, and yes, we think we understand and know each other. We may get surprises here and there, but it is something that we are very critically alert to ensure that we never, ever create gray areas that could lead to levels of corruption or misunderstanding.
Wow. Yeah, just killing two birds with one stone. My following question was related to that in terms of the effective and efficient use of the university's finances and resources, as well as safeguarding that. And I believe you have touched on it, and I think we get a sense of importance. Why is it so important to safeguard this asset? Moving right along within the education space, we are currently facing the issues of funding, also the accessibility of information, or even accessing the institution itself. How do you plan on addressing that?
I mean, that's something that is very critical and uppermost in the radar of the institution. I mean, you speak about making sure resources are not misused. My goodness, at the center of this is making this institution accessible and available to students. If now we were going to take those limited resources and use them for things that are not directed towards that, we would be completely amiss. So we've deliberated on this. It is one of our high risks that we've seen in the institution, that funding, particularly because our biggest income comes from subsidy, comes from NSFAS, comes from student fees. Now, all three of those do not look sustainable. We have asked ourselves the question, what is it that we can do to make sure that we raise enough funds just for our coffers, to make sure that should any of those elements that bring in funding into our institution are not able to, we can then be in a position to plug that. It's early days. I mean, we've been boasting that we have a council-managed resources that are a certain level. To be honest with you, that's not enough. If we were to get absolutely no income, we wouldn't be in a position to run this institution without that. So it is something that is a priority to us to say, how do we go and look and access all those available avenues that we have not before tapped to come and assist us in raising our funding, so that we have adequate resources should anything not go right with any of our funding.
Yes. Wow. Well, having spoken of that and the importance, I think our viewers, such as students, would be very delighted to hear that they are a priority to the institution. Very
Absolutely.
much.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm quite chuffed. I'll use the word chuffed. Chuffed even by the fact that our MEC sits and occupies itself with, okay, some students are funded by NSFAS, but the funding is not available at the time they face being excluded. Our MEC goes and says, how do we find money in order to support those students to at least begin at the right time, and we will have to deal with whatever happens at a later stage. I think you have at the leadership of this institution men and women who really see this as a priority and want to do whatever is possible to alleviate it as a challenge.
So I'm getting that sense. Would you say that also in terms of decision making, and since students are important to university, to UJ specifically, is their inclusion in terms of decision making of importance as well?
Yes, in council we have two members. We have members of Senate represented. First, I'm talking about staff. We have the members of the leadership group involved. We have two members of the SRC participating in all decision making. There are no decisions that are made. Only we have a representative of the convocation as well. There are absolutely zero decisions that are ever taken without those members. They are fully members of council. I think it is important to emphasize that, yes. So students are greatly represented in council.
Which is very important to understand, that as our student viewers and other people get to understand how the institution actually functions, and that everyone is included in all decisions that have been taken.
Yes. I'll take this chance and say this, though, that for me, what has been disappointing, because we look at that as well, if members of SRC sit in council, then we need to make sure students take on that power by participating in the election of their SRC. I think last year we had around 19% participation, which is not very encouraging, because this is an opportunity to have someone who represents your interests. So we would like to do whatever possible to up those percentages.
Well, us as UJTV, we're going to echo your words and ensure that participation tries to increase or increases. Yes. Moving along, I believe also the initiatives or projects that you may have in mind in terms of implementing and improving the university's performance and reputation should be also in line. Do you have any that you'd like to share with us?
And before we even think about creativity, I mean, our country faces, we were sitting here and we had to pause because electricity went off. There's the water challenges. I'm sure that some of the students who were taking to the streets were decrying the scarcity of water. I'm chuffed by the fact that the management of this university already started on a path of harvesting or harnessing solar energy to make sure, so around 15% now of our energy comes from solar. I'm remembering that in some of the committees I sit in, there's lots of engagement in trying to see how can we harvest water that comes from rain. How can we alleviate this? So these are people who are really saying, hey, we don't know how far this is going to go, but we need to make sure that our students are able to receive learning, to participate in research, etc., without interruption. So that's project number one for me. Is it's very critically important to make sure that we are able to continue to operate despite any disruptions that may happen in the university. Secondly, okay, we've spoken about funding, so I won't talk about it. It's top priority, but the raising of funding is top priority for the university, for council. We've spoken about that already. We heard Prof. Mpedi articulate the aspiration of a medical school. It's got full support of council. It is a project that we would like to see the university finally getting allowed, because it is about getting the permissions, finally allowed to engage and roll out that project. But a very strong thing that may look very subtle is issues of mental health. And it's not just about young people, it's affecting even adults. And it's almost at pandemic levels. It even contributes to the issues of gender-based violence. We are saying as council, besides even sorting our own problems, how do we even contribute as this intellectual institution? How do we even contribute towards how this scourge of society can be alleviated? So it is something that is being looked at. It's projects that are being thought about. What are the initiatives that we can carry out in order to make sure that students can get to that level of mental stability, even lecturers, because of the work, the loads of work that they have to do. They find that they struggle sometimes now and again with mental health issues. How do we do our very best to resolve mental health and gender-based violence that we have been witnessing? Because yes, losing even one student is just one student too much. How do we manage that? That's critically important. But I was inspired when Prof. Mbedi ultimately shared that I would like to improve on how we as a university pursue the goals that were set by my predecessors. On top of that, how then do we direct this to societal impact? That sounds like a very fudgy ideal because you don't measure it with ease. But it is a very critically important goal that he has set there to say, how do we make sure that the outcomes or the outputs of our research, our teaching, etc., come out and impact society directly, because we've set this as a mission of this university, transforming local society. So I was quite inspired by him articulating it in that way. So we as council are going to make sure that we support him in this. But the one thing that stands out, and I was sharing it with Victor before, for me is we have only 3 to 5 years to touch students. And it's questions that we keep asking ourselves as the leadership of the institution. In these 5 years of touching students, besides the learning, the technical learning, the technical research, how does the institution touch students such that when they come out of the institution, they are whole human beings who want to impact, to direct society. They become active members of society. I mean, I speak about, students are not voting for their SRCs. My goodness, even with us and election, you can see that there's a building apathy to not participate in national and local government elections. How do we breed students? How do we bring out students who are who engage themselves with issues of the society that they are growing up in, such that they can go and influence and impact and participate in matters that affect our country, affect our continent, affect the whole world that we live in. So that for me is a deep passion that I have to say, in the 5 years, how then do we touch them in ways that influence them to become these whole human beings?
Wow. I think I now see the vision of the institution quite vividly through the words that you have uttered, and I'm quite inspired as also part of the UJ team and as part of the UJTV. We'd like to celebrate you and encourage you that we go forth with what you have stated to us. I believe you've given us all that we need for the show. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Dear viewers, you've heard it live straight from us, UJTV, and the name of the show is In Conversation. Make sure that you stay tuned in. Goodbye.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.